Welcome back to Lost Ledger. In the last episode, we watched the Crusades fracture under their own weight. Cities were sacked. Armies were misdirected. Faith gave way to politics and desperation. By the mid-13th century, the Crusading movement was no longer rising or even struggling. It was declining. What followed were not wars of confidence, but wars of last attempts. The Seventh Crusade began in 1248. Led by King Louis IX of France, a ruler deeply committed to the idea that faith, discipline, and moral authority could restore what decades of failure had lost. Louis believed the mistake of earlier crusades was strategy, not purpose. He believed victory could still be achieved if it was done correctly. Once again, the target was Egypt. Control Egypt and the Holy Land could be reached. The crusading army landed near Damietta, the same city that had consumed the Fifth Crusade decades earlier. At first, success seemed possible. Damietta fell quickly, but history repeated itself. Rather than adapt to local conditions, the Crusaders advanced inland toward Cairo, moving deeper into hostile territory. The Nile flooded. Supply lines collapsed. Disease spread. At Al-Manshura, Egyptian forces lured the Crusader army into narrow terrain. European cavalry, the backbone of Crusader warfare, became useless. What followed was not a heroic defeat, but a breakdown. The Crusader army was surrounded. Thousands were killed, and King Louis IX himself was captured. The King of France was imprisoned, ransomed, and released only after surrendering Damietta and paying a massive sum. The Seventh Crusade ended in humiliation. Yet Louis did not return home immediately. He remained in the eastern Mediterranean for years, reinforcing fortifications and negotiating alliances, not because victory was near, but because withdrawal felt like surrender. By the time Louis finally returned to France, the Crusader states were weaker than before, but the king was not finished. In 1270, Louis launched one final expedition, the Eighth Crusade. This time, the target was not Jerusalem, it was North Africa. The crusading army landed near the ruins of ancient Carthage in the blistering heat of the summer of 1270. The campaign was a catastrophe before it even began. The local water sources were contaminated. The heat was unbearable, and once again, disease ripped through the camp. A plague, likely dysentery or typhoid, spread like wildfire. Soldiers died by the hundreds. The army was immobilized, slowly rotting under the African sun. And then, the disease claimed its most important victim. King Louis IX, the last great crusading monarch, died in his tent, whispering the name Jerusalem with his final breath. With the king's death, the heart of the Eighth Crusade was ripped out. The campaign collapsed. His son, Philip III, sick himself, immediately negotiated a truce and took the broken army home. The Great Holy Wars, which had begun 2 centuries earlier with a thunderous call to arms and the march of hundreds of thousands, ended not in a climactic battle for the Holy City, but with a plague-ridden retreat from the shores of North Africa. The death of Louis marked the end of the line for large-scale, royally sponsored crusades to the east. The spirit was broken. The resources were exhausted. The political will had evaporated. While smaller expeditions would continue for a time, the grand, continent-spanning dream was over. Europe's focus had shifted. Internal wars, dynastic struggles, and economic change now mattered more than distant holy cities. And in the east, the remaining Crusader outposts stood isolated, undermanned, and surrounded. Their fall was no longer a question of if, only when. The era of the Crusades was finally, definitively, drawing to a close. The saga of the Crusades is a vast and complex tapestry of faith, ambition, and conflict. If you've been captivated by this journey through one of history's most defining eras, make sure to subscribe to Lost Ledger. We dive deep into the stories that shaped our world without myth, without heroes, and without excuses. Hit the subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you don't miss our final episode, where we witness the fall of Acre and the ultimate end of the Crusader states. Thank you for watching. History never truly ends. It leaves a ledger.